Hello and welcome to Edwards Beyond the Test. It's a podcast that goes behind the scenes of the flight test mission at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm Dawn Waldman from the 412 Test Wing Public Affairs. I'm happy to introduce our special guest, who is the Weapons Integration Flight Chief for the 775th Test Squadron here at Edwards. Big welcome to Miss Wendy Peterson.
Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here. But wow, a Weapons Integration Flight Chief, well, that's quite a title. So can you tell us what that means? What does your flight do?
Sure. There's a lot that goes into being a flight chief, and it isn't always easy, but it's worth it. As a flight chief, I have the privilege of recruiting, hiring, and serving our talented engineers at Edwards Air Force Base through personal and professional development, and do the best I can every day to care for them and to challenge them and to recognize the contributions that they make in an effort to provide our warfighter with the tools they need to do their jobs and to keep our country safe. Being a flight chief isn't always about people, though. I also get to contribute to the technical realm as the chair for test plan and report review boards. And this basically means that I get to ensure we're testing the right systems in an effective and efficient manner. I also help ensure that accurate, relevant, and timely reports are delivered to our customers that tell the right story of how well the system performs and what the warfighter is or is not getting from a capability of standpoint.
The 775th, so basically what is its mission?
So the mission is really to provide that accurate, operationally relevant test and evaluation for our nation and our allies. And if I can, from the weapons integration perspective, my engineers have a pretty amazing job. And from a top level, they get to ensure that every missile, every bomb, bullet, even hypersonic vehicles are deployed effectively from the fighters and the bombers that we test here on this base. So we make sure that when the pilot needs a weapon to hit a specific target, that the weapon system he or she is depending on will receive the information that it needs to attack our adversaries and protect our troops on the ground.
Wow. So what are some of the programs you've worked on?
Awesome. So over the last 13 years, I've gotten the opportunity to work on the F-16, the F-15, and the B-1 bomber aircraft. And some of my most memorable experiences have been working on the B-1 bomber. And I got to work on some urgent operational need programs where our warfighter says they need something to combat a current threat and they need it right away. So we don't have a lot of time to spend 6 months or even a year doing all of the test planning, the execution and reporting. We work very hard and very long hours to get a capability out within a very short period of time, say a month or maybe a month and a half. So that program that I'm thinking of specifically was integrating the brand new targeting pod onto the B-1 bomber and the first laser-guided bomb, the laser JDAM on. So after we finished testing, within maybe a month of our last test and providing the customer with a report, we were seeing news articles about that system being used to defend our troops. And it's just really rewarding. Another memorable experience that I've had is the opportunity to work as a flight test engineer, which means that as part of the operations group and a civilian, I get to fly as an engineer in the back of F-16 aircraft. So I support test missions, proficiency missions. In fact, my very first test mission got to be on an automatic ground collision avoidance system mission. And that capability in and of itself is pretty incredible to save lives and to see it from the aircraft. Granted, I spent most of the mission trying not to get sick. But it was a really, really fun program to be a part of. And I really enjoyed the flying aspect of my job.
It is rewarding to know that the work we do here supports our warfighters, but it also increases the importance of that mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's fascinating. So, when we come back, we're going to talk about childhood dreams that led to an interesting career. Welcome back to Edwards Beyond the Test. Today we're talking with Miss Wendy Peterson, who is the Weapons Integration Flight Chief for the 775th Test Squadron. And Wendy, just a moment ago, we were talking about the programs that you're working on and the knowledge you must have to succeed at all of the work that you do here. Let's talk about your education and your degrees. You're an aerospace engineer, is that correct?
That's correct. I went to school at UC San Diego for my aerospace engineering bachelor's degree, and after that I came to Edwards to start working as an engineer. About 9 years after starting as an engineer here at Edwards, I went back to school through the long-term full-time program and I went to the University of Southern California. I ended up choosing a master's program in systems architecting and engineering, which differed from what I thought I would always be doing for my master's program. With my passion in aerospace, I thought for sure I would do a master's degree in aerospace engineering and just continue to deepen my knowledge. But as I worked at Edwards, I realized that I had a passion for the bigger picture and how different systems work together and how to make them more efficient and effective. And that's where I chose the systems architecting and engineering degree through USC.
Well, Wendy, when did you get the bug to pursue this as your career in the first place?
It's a great story. I remember being a young girl, and my father gave me a book about outer space, and I devoured that entire book. I learned everything I possibly could about the stars and the solar system, and I just found a passion in outer space. And so I knew from a young age that I wanted to be an astronaut, and it was just a matter of figuring out how to get there. And so going through high school, talking to mentors and my parents, both of which really encouraged me to go into aerospace engineering as a good path to get to being an astronaut. And I thought for a while that I would join the military and become a fighter pilot, because that was one of the most common paths to becoming an astronaut. So I went into high school knowing aerospace engineering was the degree I wanted to do. I did very well in high school so that I could get into a good college. And when I went to UC San Diego, I actually started in the Navy ROTC program. So kind of went along that path of joining the military and becoming a fighter pilot. And I quickly found out that for me personally, the military was just not the right avenue. And so I had to reevaluate how I was going to become an astronaut. And for me, that was serving the military as a civilian.
That's fascinating. Then tell us then what brought you to Edwards.
Sure. So I was working for Northrop Grumman at the time, and I actually had planned to continue working for them after school. And one day on my way to class, there was a career fair on our library walk, and I saw this giant poster with an F-22, and it said Test Pilot School on it. And I instantly stopped, and I just thought to myself, like, do you think I could actually be a test pilot someday? And so I stopped and I talked to the recruiters there, and I asked them what Edwards was all about and what opportunities it could provide for me and how I could contribute to its mission. And they talked about test pilot school and how as a civilian you could attend and get time in military aircraft. And that was fascinating to me and took me back on that path toward flying and becoming an astronaut.
Well, dreams of space and working at Edwards, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Welcome back to Edwards Beyond the Test. Today we're talking with Miss Wendy Peterson, who is the Weapons Integration Flight Chief for the 775th Test Squadron. Wendy, we've been talking about how you came to Edwards after your internship with Northrop Grumman, but you didn't quite find your path to becoming an astronaut when you got here. So how has it all worked out for you?
Well, it's funny how life throws us curveballs, and we come to a junction in our life and we feel like we have a path we know we want to go down, and there are times where we take detours in that path, and that's how I feel like, the Navy ROTC program was for me in college. And then coming to Edwards, I'd planned to go to test pilot school. That was the next step towards becoming an astronaut. And I worked as an engineer, and then at a very early time in my career, I got the opportunity to be a lead for the first time. And that was something that was extremely exciting for me, but also very scary. I was not someone who liked to speak in public or to lead people in the front lines. And so it was a very scary but fun opportunity, and I decided to take that over applying to test pilot school. And I knew that that might mean I never go to test pilot school, and maybe the astronaut dream doesn't happen. But it was an opportunity to grow myself and to pursue my passions of leading people. So I went and I did that, and it was because I did such a good job in that position that my commander, my DOPE, and my chief engineer brought me aside one day and asked me if I would be willing to take on a position that was traditionally held for a test pilot school graduate and be an FTE for the F-15 program. And so as the first civilian to be able to do that and to then be on flying orders, without going to test pilot school was such a privilege. And again, also a very scary job because as a flight test engineer and a test conductor for the F-15 program, I, again, had to speak in front of large groups of people and over the radio, which at the time was very terrifying. But it gave me that opportunity to fly, and I thought I had given that up by taking on the leadership roles instead of test pilot school.
Well, let's talk about your opportunity to fly an F-15. What was that like?
Oh, well, so I worked on the F-15 program as a flight test engineer, and while we tried really hard to get civilians to fly in those, that occurred after I left the program. So all of my flying was actually done in the F-16 in the back seat, and so it was an incredible opportunity to see what it's like from the aircraft, what our test missions look like and how much goes into that. When you're a pilot, which I was just an engineer sitting in the back, taking down data and helping as I could, the pilots are executing these missions, which we as engineers give them very strict guidelines on how to fly and what they can and cannot do. And oh, by the way, they have to fly this aircraft at the same time. So it was just awe-inspiring to see that and to be a part of that.
Well, you've been so fortunate to have had an excellent career here and excellent mentors, too, throughout your 13-year career at Edwards. Do you now find yourself, though, serving as a mentor yourself, wanting to help others develop?
Absolutely. And I can say wholeheartedly that I would not be the person I am today or where I am today without the mentors that have spoken into my life, that have helped me through struggles and helped me to make decisions on which career path to take and, told me honestly where I need to grow and what opportunities would help me grow and become the person that they saw I could be that maybe I hadn't seen yet. And that's exactly what I want to do now. And that's my purpose in life as I see it, is to really help people see their potential and live their best life. And so I do that through mentoring whenever I can and always accepting when someone is seeking guidance or help, going to lunch with them or going to Starbucks to get coffee and trying to help as I can, but also in teaching the leadership classes here on base. And to me, that is just my greatest pride and joy to see these students come in and to learn leadership principles, and I learn from them as well in every class. It's wonderful to see the people that work on this base and to see them grow and develop into who they can be.
Well, you have a very busy career here, but you're also the mother of 3 children.
That's right.
How do you achieve that work-life balance?
Well, I would say that it's not something you can do and be done with balancing work and life. It's a continual process, and it starts with identifying what your priorities are. So early on in my career, I really hadn't established how I wanted my work and my life outside of work to be balanced. And so I just focused on what was right in front of me. And oftentimes that meant I stayed at work longer than I wanted to. And once I had kids, that really put into perspective the time I wanted to spend at home and with them. And it was still a struggle because you have people at work that are depending on you, and the mission that we do here is so important. And it took the mentors that I have had speak into my life and remind me that, there is someone here at work who can take that business trip or who can take that meeting so that I can make a t-ball game or I can go volunteer in my kid's classroom. And so once you've established those priorities, you really need the people to be able to surround you and encourage you when you're doubting yourself or feeling like you might be judged because you're spending less time at work or less time at home, whichever your priority is. And then kind of the last thing, outside of priorities and people is really just giving yourself permission to live out those priorities, regardless of what someone else thinks or what they might think. And I think often you aren't being judged as much as you think you are. And you just need to live your life in the way that you feel is right and spend the time at work or with your family or with your friends as you see fit.
Well, Wendy, before I let you go, tell us, what is it that makes you very excited about coming to work at the center of the aerospace testing universe?
What a great question. So I love that this job gives me the opportunity to harmonize my passions for aircraft and flying and developing people, along with the purpose that I mentioned earlier, to really develop people and help them live their best life. So I get to come to work every day energized and excited to change lives here on this base. And then the days that I get to do that and I see the fruits of my labor, I go home feeling completely fulfilled. So I can say without a doubt there's nowhere else I'd want to work except for the center of the aerospace testing universe.
Well, Wendy, we really appreciate that you took the time to be with us today and sharing your story with us and taking us beyond the test. We invite our listeners to submit any questions or suggestions for future episodes by sending us an email at beyondtest@412tw.us. Thanks to everyone for joining us. I'm Dawn Waldman for Edwards Beyond the Test.